Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Reardon and today we're making a dog cake. This one is inspired by Max from The Secret Life of Pets, but you can customise it to make it look more like your own dog if you like. The first thing we'll need is some yummy strawberry ganache frosting. To make that, hull your strawberries and then wash them really well. And I like to make the frosting and the cakes the day before I'm actually decorating the cake. Place the strawberries in a blender and puree them, and I'll put all the recipe quantities on the howtocookthat.net website for you, and I'll link to that below. Pour the puree into a fine sieve and push it through using the back of your spoon. Now this will take about 5 minutes, so just be patient, keep going until you have just the seeds left and all that lovely juice is in the bowl. Now we're going to mix half of the strawberry juice with some melted white chocolate. Now I'm making more than you actually need for this cake, so I can use it for another recipe. I'll decrease the quantity online to just give you the amount you'll require. Once that's combined, place it in the fridge to thicken up. Put the other half of your juice in a pan with some sugar, and you want to heat that up until the sugar is dissolved. So what we're making here is like a really thin jam that we can use on the layers of the cake just to give it a bit more of a strawberry flavour. Bake 1.5 times my chocolate cake recipe in 2 trays, and the recipe video for how to make this cake and the dog template are all on the website for you. Now because this cake is tall and skinny, it's going to need support or it will just topple over. I'm using a cake spike down the middle, and we'll use 2 small cake boards about halfway and 3/4 of the way up, and some cake pop sticks too. Now on day 2, trim the top of your cakes to level them out, and then place your template piece over the top and cut out the circles. Use a spatula just to ease it off the paper so that you can lift it off. Now continue to cut out more circles from your first tray of cake, and then repeat that with your second tray, cutting out the ones that you have left. Place your cake on some baking paper. Now usually we'd stack it straight onto the cake board, but because the spike is not centered in the cake, if we do it over here we can shift the layers around until they're just right, and then pick it up and put it over on the spike. Add some of your thin fresh strawberry jam, followed by some strawberry ganache. And I've warmed this a little just to make it easy to get a thin layer between the layers of cake. Continue to stack up your first 4 layers, and that takes us to where the first cake board needs to be. You can see on the template just there. And you can also see the cake is not stacked straight, and that's how it needs to be. It needs to be a bit further forward at the front. And the cake spike is also not central on the cake. So line the cake up with the spike and place it over the top. Check that the cake is sticking out at the back and going in at the front. Once you've got that right, push a cake pop stick down to the base and take note where it comes to. Pull it out again and cut it and another stick to the same height, and we'll need those to support it at the front because the dog is coming forward because of his head, and just push those 2 in there. Add the mini cake board on top, and the cake pop sticks are just stopping it going down too far. Cover that in ganache and then check where your next layer sits and place it on top. Add more jam and continue to stack up 3 more layers. And now again, to support his head, we're going to need to add 2 more cake pop sticks, just going down to where our previous cake board is. And then add the next little board on top. Cover that in ganache. Add the next layer of cake on that. And then if you look at the template, you can see the last layer sits towards the back for the top of his head there. So just pop that into place. That looks like a leaning tower of cake. Now, if we didn't have the supports in here, it would not stand up like this. It would just topple over. Good doggy. Place your template in front of your cake and cut away the pieces of cake that you can see. Once you've cut those out, now it looks dog-shaped already. Turn it to the back and put the back template over the top and trim off the sides. Now Max is quite a skinny dog. If you have a broader breed of dog, then you don't need to trim the sides like this. From those 2 cuts you end up with the right shape, but the corners are still a little bit box-like. So just take your knife and trim off a tiny slice so that it becomes rounded. Now we want to cover the whole thing in ganache. And again, I've warmed the ganache up just a little bit to make it runnier. With a fresh carved cake like this, it's quite crumbly, which means it's yummy and moist, but it also makes it a little hard to cover. So by warming the ganache, that just makes it easy. Once it is covered, take some acetate or bendy plastic and run it up the sides to smooth out the ganache. Then put that in the fridge for about an hour for the ganache to set firmly. Now at this point you need to decide if you want to make a dog or a dinosaur. What's your favourite pet? Do you prefer dogs, cats, or would you like a dinosaur? Let me know in the comments below. To make a dog, wrap some white fondant around the front of the cake and then at the back just squeeze it together to make a join. Cut off the bulk of the excess so that weight doesn't drag it down, and then continue to smooth it and shape it using your hands. And once you're happy with it, trim off the rest of the fondant closer to the back. Now we have a join at the back because he has a spot here that will cover it, so we won't see it anyway. Trim the excess from around the base using a knife and just tuck it in underneath. Now take some more fondant and drape it over his head and squeeze it up at the back to give him a mohawk. Now he does look like a dinosaur. Trim that off roughly and then smooth and shape the fondant around his face. Now if you don't want to use fondant, you could watch the teddy bear cake video for how to pipe fur on a cake using buttercream, and that would work really well for this dog too. Trim it off more neatly and then using a knife cut it at the neck at the level where the other fondant came to, and we'll cover this with his collar in a little while, so don't worry about making it perfectly neat. Roll a ball of white to the size of his hind leg and flatten it using the palm of your hand. Now using a knife, trim it off on an angle so that we can join it to the cake. Make a cut at the lower front and then use your fingers to smooth and shape it so that you make a little leg and the cute little foot there. Rub a bit of water on the side of his body to make it stick and then add that leg into place. Now at this point I realise there's a problem. He should be facing the other way on the cake board so that there's room behind him for his tail. So when you make your cake, make sure he's facing the other direction. I'm going to take the very risky move of moving him, which means his central support is no longer going to be connected to the board. I'm a little worried he might fall over and collapse altogether. Okay, so he seems to have survived, but I might have misshapen him a little bit in the move, but hopefully we will survive. Add his other leg and then add some fondant around the base. Speaking of moving, our house is currently for sale, so after making this cake I have to completely clean the kitchen and get it ready for a home open tomorrow, which is probably why I'm not thinking clearly. Use your knife just to trim off that fondant around the board so that it looks like the mat he sits on when he's sitting at the door waiting for his owner to come home. We are moving to Melbourne at the end of this year, which is very exciting for us. Just run your knife along the mat there to give it more of a fabricy texture so it looks like a mat. Now before we leave Sydney, I thought it would be nice to do a catch-up. So Dave and I will be at Berkelouw Books in Cronulla on Saturday, October 22. And you can get the Deep Enders book there, or if you've already got it, bring it along and we'll sign it for you. And I might even make some macarons and bring those too. I'll put all the details of times and everything below. Now to make Max's front legs, roll a snake of fondant and make it narrower at the ankle. And then curl around some to make his foot, or you could just roll a ball and add that on top. Trim it off at the right height and place it on the front of the cake. Using a knife, add indents to the paws for his toes and cut patches in the sizes shown on your printout and add them into place on the cake. Now if you dampen the back of the patch, it will just stick right on, but don't make it too wet or you're going to get drips of that different colour going down on your white. Now the biggest patch on Max is around his back, so add that piece and wrap it around him like a cape. He has another patch on his other shoulder and a big one across one half of his face that makes him super cute. For his eyes, roll 2 balls of white and squash them to make them the shape of the template. If you rub a tiny bit of cooking oil on your fingers, it will stop it from sticking to the fondant. Now roll 2 balls of brown and flatten them in the same way and shape them just right, and then add them to the eye. Repeat that with tiny balls of black Dogs don't really have eyes that look like this. They have hardly any white visible, but this style just makes them look more human-like so we can relate to them in the movie. Then add a really tiny ball of white on one side of the pupil to make it look alive. Add those into place quite close to the line of the patch in the centre of his face. And then add an eyebrow. Now you can cut those out using the guide on the template. The other eyebrow needs to be a darker brown so that it shows up on his patch. Now eyebrows are very important for expression, so choose the expression you want the dog to have and position your brows accordingly. Add a little bit of water around the eye and then roll a tiny snake of black. Just use your fingers to roll it and get it even and really skinny, and then carefully wrap that around his eye. And this gives us that typical cartoony look, and it also helps the white eye stand out against the dog's fur. You don't need it as much on the other one, but we'll add it just to even it up. Now to cover the join on his neck, wrap a strip of blue around for his collar. Take a rectangle of black and cut out a little chunk from each side, and then place that over the bone template and squash it to make it the right shape. Then indent each side to make it like the bone. Now you can write Max on this or the name of your dog if you want, or you can just leave it plain. Brush that with gold luster dust and then add it into place on his chest just below the collar. Add a snake of black running up from the bone and over the collar, and use your knife to poke it around the collar and trim it off to just the right length. Then using some luster dust mixed with lemon juice or a little bit of alcohol, just paint the black bit so that it becomes gold and it matches his little bone there. Roll another snake and bend it around, sort of squarish, and then trim off one end. Add this around the collar on one side and then paint that gold too. Now these little details just make the difference between the cake looking okay and it looking really good. Poke a hole in the centre and add a short bit of fondant and use your skewer to position it correctly, and then again paint that in gold. Cut a thin strip of blue and wrap it around his collar, so that's the bit that holds it in place, and then trim that off with your knife, and then poke a couple of holes through the collar. For his tail, roll together some brown and some white so that they join together. It doesn't really matter what that join looks like. Place it over the template and shape it to make the tip of his tail. Trim that to size and then add some indents running down to make it look like scruffy fur. Add his tail into place at the back of the cake, position it how you want it. And now for his ears. Add some Tylose powder to some brown fondant. Now the Tylose just makes the fondant set quickly because we want his ears to sit up. Roll a reasonably thick layer and cut around the template for his ears. Use your finger to smooth down the edges, especially on the bottom side where it's joining the head as a spot. Really flatten out those ones. Now you can see one splotch comes down lower than the other, so make sure you get them on the right side. Add a little water to the back of his head and add one ear into place and allow the front of the ear to flop over. And I'm going to use some paper towel just rolled up to support it into position. Add the other ear and position them how you want them to sit. Now because it has Tylose in it, that will set in about 2 hours and you'll be able to take that paper towel out. Add a few indents on the edges of his ears and some lines going down so they look like they've got fur on them. And then do the same on his tummy just to give it a light fur texture, and you can do that all the way around until you're happy with it. Now for his nose, take some black fondant that's been left on the counter for about 20 minutes and roll it into an oval, and then flatten that to the size of his nose. Then add the 2 indents for his nostrils. Now because we left this fondant out to dry out a bit before we rolled it, you get this rough crackled texture on top, a bit like a dog's nose looks like. Using a little water, add that into place, and now he looks cute. And use your template as a guide for where his mouth should go. And again, there are so many expressions of Max in The Secret Life of Pets, so just look at different pictures and change it up depending on what you want. Roll a ball of green and put it to one side. Carefully remove those ear supports and your Max cake is ready for a party. Subscribe to How to Cook That for more crazy sweet creations. Click here for the recipe, and here for my channel, here for last week's candy video. This cake was requested by Tom Mayer, Adriana Time to Doodle Time, Paigey Lou 08, Lily Bryan, Lucy Sassy, Sarah 29, Reth Wizzy, Madison Nagia, Faith, Amy, Rebecca, Lag, Steezy, Kylie, April, Brianna, Taryn, Marty, Alicia, Sarah, Winston, Lolly TG, DIY at ABS Girls, Brianna, Maury, Taryn, Liv, Ellie, Animal Mad, Mena, Young, Ella, ASDHD, Lilia, Melinda, Ryan, Jessica, Eve, Gabrielle, Kim, Sweet Jessie 207, Janie, Jin, Cute Cupcake, Cute Wolf, Hannah, Florence, Thea, Katie, Marty, Helen, Abby, Lauren, Alana, Princess Magic, Animal Lover, Niam, Broccoli, Sofa, Kale, 624, Caden, and many more. Put all your requests in the comments below. Make it a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.